My bestie and boyfriend got into a huge fight, and now she's trying to persuade me to break up with my sociopathic boyfriend, but she won't tell me why. My boyfriend Blake, 25 meters, and I, 25 feet, have been together for 3 years. Before we dated, we used to be co-workers at a retail store when we were both 17. The first thing I noticed about Blake when we met was that he never smiled or showed any emotion. He always had a serious, stoned look on his face. He hardly, if ever, showed any emotional sentiments. I don't know how to describe it accurately, but just imagine Eminem or Shadow from Sonic and how they both always have a serious look on their faces. That's how Blake is. Even when customers or our co-workers would try to joke with him, he never cracked a smile or laughed, which would make it awkward for them. However, Blake has always been respectful to those around him and never once raised his voice throughout his whole career. Our co-workers always thought Blake was weird and warned me to avoid him. However, despite all that, Blake and I ended up getting along great and became good friends. I never really minded that he never showed any emotions and still thought he was a good person. He even put up with my loud, extroverted self, lol. Over the years, Blake and I became close, and I would occasionally see him smile or laugh, which I would lightly tease him about when it did happen. On my 22nd birthday, which is on Valentine's, Blake had asked me to come over to his house and said it was serious, and when I got there, it was full of decorations and flowers, and Blake was dressed nicely. He gave a long speech about how much our friendship meant to him and that he was grateful he had met me and asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend. I swear it felt like I was in a 70s rom-com movie. It was the first time I had seen Blake so vulnerable. He still had his cute, serious stone face on him, but I could tell he was extremely nervous. I, of course, said yes, and we have been a happy couple since then. Now onto the issue. My best friend Sarah, 26 feet, and I have been friends since we were in 5th grade. Sarah and I were each other's partners in crime. She and I were really close before I met Blake. She had never met Blake before, as at the time, he and I were just barely talking, and by the time we graduated high school, she had moved away to stay with her dad in another city, so she never got the chance to meet him. I, of course, talked about him and showed pictures of him and me together when we became closer and started dating. However, she once stated how she found it weird that he never was really smiling or seemed happy when he was with me and that I shouldn't be dating someone who doesn't want to be happy around me. I brushed it off and just assured her that's how he is and that he is actually a sweet guy. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have looked past what she said, but at that time, I thought she was just being a protective friend. She had recently come back to our city and wanted the three of us to meet together. We decided to meet at a restaurant she and I used to hang out at. When we got there, Sarah and I ran at each other and squealed like little girls while Blake just stood and watched us. When Sarah looked at Blake, I noticed her expression immediately changed, and she awkwardly smiled and shook his hand and only said hi to him. Blake just nonchalantly said it was good to meet her. She then went back to talking to me, completely ignoring Blake. When we got our menus, Blake couldn't find a meal he would enjoy and just said he would be fine with a small appetizer. Sarah unexpectedly said, "Why? Is nothing here good enough for you? Why would you agree to come here if you weren't going to get anything then?" She tried to say it like it was a joke, but any person could tell it was obviously not. I then defended Blake, claiming he could have whatever he liked and it wasn't a big deal. Sarah then dropped it at that. Throughout our dinner, Sarah was ignoring Blake and was only trying to talk to me. Blake just stayed silent and watched us, not really caring about it, as he normally is not a big talker when meeting people. When she did include him, she would seemingly only ask him questions that would only need a one-word answer. And when he did answer, she would just give him side eyes or just say, "Okay then." I could already tell Sarah did not like Blake, but I couldn't understand why. She wasn't directly being rude to him, but I could tell when she was making snide remarks about how he was emotionless and whatnot. At one point, she excused herself to the bathroom, and when she left, I asked Blake if he was okay, and he assured me he was okay and just wanted me to catch up with my friend. I apologized for how she was acting, and he claimed he didn't care about it and was just happy I was with my friend. I was relieved he wasn't hurt by what was happening but still felt bad for him. After dinner, the three of us went for a walk to see the buildings and stores, and Sarah seemed to be more cheerful. We then came across a person walking a small puppy. I love dogs so much, and Sarah and I cooed and were giggling at how cute the puppy was. Blake was just standing, watching us fawn over the puppy. Once the dog owner left, Sarah turned to Blake, and she immediately became angry and asked, "How the heck could you not even smile for a puppy? Are you seriously that soulless?" I was immediately shocked about her sudden change of tone and was about to say something, but Blake just shrugged and walked away, continuing our walk. I asked her what the hell her problem was, and she immediately apologized and said she didn't mean to yell. Our walk then became awkward. I wanted to just go home, but I also felt bad for Sarah, as she still had something else planned for after our walk that she had paid for the three of us to do, so I thought to just suck it up until it was over. I then had to use the bathroom, and we found a nearby store. I went in, and Blake and Sarah waited for me outside. When I came back, I found Sarah hysterically yelling at Blake. I immediately ran over to them and asked what the hell was going on. Sarah was in hysterics, but she kept yelling, "It's not going to happen. I will never let this happen." I asked her what she was talking about, but all she said was Blake was a sociopath and demanded I break up with him. I looked at Blake, who was just as shocked as I was. I kept trying to ask the both of them what had happened, but neither would answer me, which scared me. People started staring, and I desperately tried to calm Sarah down to de-escalate what was happening. Eventually, I told Blake to walk back to the car so we could go home, and I would call an Uber for Sarah. When we were alone, I was trying to get Sarah to tell me what had happened, but she just stayed silent. Blake came back to pick me up, and Sarah was just deathly staring at him, and he kept his head low. I didn't know what was happening and just started assuming they had an argument. Thankfully, Sarah's Uber came and took her back to her hotel. Our car ride home was awkwardly silent, but as soon as we got home, I demanded to know what happened between him and Sarah. Blake just stayed silent, and at that point, I was irritated with the both of them not answering my question. Blake said he couldn't say what happened but that he was so sorry for what happened. That made me even more confused, and I asked him to please just say what had happened. He only said he swore he didn't do anything bad but that he simply just couldn't say what happened. I then told him I was going to sleep in the guest bedroom as I just couldn't handle everything that was happening. Especially since I still had no answer as to what had happened between the two of them. He said he understood and told me he loved me and went to our room. This all happened not even a few hours ago. I am currently lying in the guest room, confused and scared as ever. I know Sarah and Blake didn't really get along, but I don't know what caused such a huge fight that neither can tell me about. An hour ago I got a text from Sarah. I will copy and paste it here. Sarah, I'm really sorry about what happened tonight, but please listen to me. You need to break up with Blake. He is a literal sociopath who is only using you. He doesn't deserve you. I'm telling you this because I love you and want to protect you. Please break up with him. I haven't responded to her text as I know if I try asking again what happened between them she won't give me an answer. I don't know what to do. I don't know if Sarah had said something to Blake or if Blake had said something to Sarah that caused all this, but I'm scared that neither of them will tell me. Does Sarah simply just not like Blake because he doesn't like to show his emotions? Any advice on how I can get the truth or at least some answers would be helpful. Edit. I would like to thank you all for your input and advice. I am currently unable to sleep and would like to clarify some things. Blake is not a sociopath. The reason I added the story of when he asked me to be his girlfriend was to give a slight example of how he can be vulnerable and romantic. I did not want to add this, as I felt it wasn't my place to say, but for backstory, Blake and his father did not have a good relationship. All I will say is that his father raised him to believe men should show no emotion, and that's the reason why Blake is not an emotional person. Of course, there are times when he laughs, smiles, or even cries, he just doesn't do it as much as the average person would. Despite Blake being an emotionless person, he has always been very nice, respectful, and loving toward me. He has never been abusive or even raised his voice at me. Also, I do not believe Sarah and Blake had ever interacted before they met last night. Blake has to work today, so I will not see him until tonight. I will speak to him first before Sarah, and I will update as soon as I can. Also, I apologize if the story is too long or doesn't sound coherent. English is not my best language. Take care. Edit 2. Sorry for the repost. Unfortunately, my original post was taken down. I just want to let everyone know I'm okay and still waiting for Blake to come home from work. Sarah has been blowing up my phone since her first text, but I've decided not to read her texts at the moment. I want to hear Blake's side of the story first, and the way she's going about it seems uneasy to me. Update. Hey guys, I'm back with a new update. Before I begin, I just want to thank those who took the time to read and give advice on my post. Now, onto the update. The night I made the post, I had some time to sit and think about everything that happened. I now know I could have handled the situation better, and I shouldn't have let Sarah continue her horrible behavior toward Blake. The fact that neither of them was telling me what was going on irritated me, and I let my anxiety get the better of me. I wanted to hear Blake out first, so I decided not to read Sarah's messages. I turned off my phone, spent the day on my computer watching Reddit stories, and went for a run to get my mind off everything. Once Blake came home, I asked if we could talk, to which he agreed. Taking the advice of a kind commenter, I sat him down and started by apologizing for walking away from him the night before and for not defending him more during the hangout. I assured him I love and trust him deeply and that I will believe what he says to me. Eventually, Blake told me what happened. Some of you guessed it right, Blake was planning on proposing to me. The way he described it was that, When I left, he confided in Sarah that he was planning to propose to me and asked if she could help choose a ring, since she was supposed to hang out with us again another day. Blake said Sarah asked if he was being serious, and when he confirmed that he was, she started screaming and lashing out at him. She screamed at him that this engagement will never happen. "You don't deserve her." That's when I came outside. To say I was beyond shocked would be an understatement. I hugged him, apologized again, and asked if that was the reason he didn't want to tell me. Blake said yes, and it was because he didn't want to ruin the surprise. He then apologized for not just telling me, saying it wasn't worth keeping it a surprise if it was causing us problems. I told him it wasn't causing us any problems and that I love him even more now. We hugged it out and made up. Blake then asked what Sarah had said about the situation. I admitted to him that I hadn't read anything she sent and had just turned off my phone because I was scared of what she might say. After a while, I finally turned my phone on, and I honestly wish I hadn't. When Sarah said she wasn't going to let this engagement happen, she really meant it. I don't know how she could do this to me, but now she's gotten our friends, my sister, and my aunt involved, even dragging in my estranged dad, which was a real low blow. For context, my dad and I are no longer on speaking terms due to an incident with my former stepmom. They're no longer together. After reading the messages from my family and friends, it summed up to Sarah telling them I'm with a sociopath and that I'm refusing to leave him even after she tried to help. So now, the people who once knew the sweet, loving Blake that I know think he's a crazy person and are begging me to leave him. I was, and still am, beyond furious. I spent the entire night trying to clear the air with everyone, except my dad. Unfortunately, my aunt and some of my friends are still siding with Sarah, which is breaking my heart. There were so many texts from Sarah, but they ranged from her begging me to answer her, to her being mad that I was taking Blake's side and not hers, to her apologizing for involving my dad but saying, "It was for your own good." I only sent her one text, and it goes as follows, copy and pasted. "I don't understand how you expect me to take your side when you never told me why you said what you said. Blake has already told me what happened, and I can't even imagine what your side is. I can't believe you lied to our friends and my family. And for you to involve my dad? How the heck do you even have his number? Above all, you disrespected my relationship and my boyfriend. F you." I have since blocked her. She never explained why she wouldn't tell me what happened, so I still don't know her motive. Other than trying to break us up, I have no clue what her goal was. Not a great update, but Blake and I are doing okay. He has been very understanding and patient throughout all this, and I couldn't be more grateful for him. I know this might not be the end of this nightmare, so I may update again soon. I just don't know how to go about this. How can I convince my friends and my aunt that Blake is a good person? Should I somehow get Sarah to admit she was lying? Once again, thank you all for your advice. To the person who said my story was fake and that I shouldn't be with someone like Blake, just know that these types of cartoonish situations can unfortunately happen to us. And Blake is one of the best things that has ever been brought into my crazy life. I couldn't imagine my life without him. So, screw you. Anyways, I may see you all again soon. Take care. Relevant comments. Comment 1. If your family and friends are so ready to believe her, that tells me you haven't introduced Blake to them. Or not very often. Bit of life advice: him hiding all his emotions is not healthy and will come back to bite you at some point. He keeps everything bottled up, likely part of that whole men just get on with it. They're not allowed to cry, laugh, show love, or any other positive emotion. They can show only anger, disdain, and arrogance, in short, negativity. If you have kids, if you have sons, will you want them to grow up with this same mentality? He needs to learn to trust and express himself more, or this kind of thing will happen more often. It will damage his ability to go further in life, because no one trusts a closed-off, emotionless person. Whether he gets therapy or just starts to loosen up, he needs to learn he's allowed to smile at things, to chuckle, to shake his head, or express himself in some way. Response: the only person I haven't introduced Blake to as my boyfriend is my dad. He's only met him once as my friend. My friends and my family have met Blake a good amount of times, so for them to suddenly believe Sarah over the times they met Blake makes me question whether Sarah said something worse that I'm still not aware of, or if they have bad opinions of Blake they think behind my back, which is what I'm worried about. The topic of us having kids has come up before, and of course Blake does not want our kids to be emotionless or hurt me. That's actually something he's tried to go to therapy for. That said, it's not easy to undo almost 20 years of having his dad mentally harmed him and drill into his head that men don't show any emotion. A lot of his therapists haven't helped him, but he doesn't want our kids to grow up like he did, so he is still trying. I apologize for not mentioning that part in the post. He does have vulnerable moments with me. For example, I've seen him cry, laugh, and smile. It's simply not easy for him to do that with people he's not close to. Comment 2. I don't know. Why would he ask someone who had been openly hostile to him all day to help pick a ring for you? Response: When I was a little girl, I used to love wearing jewelry. Even though some of it was plastic and fake, I would always wear rings and necklaces. Sarah and I even had matching friendship bracelets. When I went into 8th grade, I stopped wearing jewelry. Since I lost an important ring, I've been afraid of losing any other piece of jewelry. The reason Blake asked her was because we were supposed to go to the mall for our next hangout, and since she was the only one who saw my jewelry phase, besides my sister and aunt, he wanted her opinion on what I might like. He said that if Sarah hadn't visited, he would have asked my sister, but since Sarah was already here, he wanted to quickly get the ring. While I now would have preferred if he'd waited to just ask my sister, it melts my heart that he couldn't wait.